Hello to everyone. We are together for a Gain Global webinar. Welcome to our session. I'm Ismail Haznedar, founder and CEO of Gain Global, and today I have Sabirul Islam with me for this session. Sabirul, welcome.
Thank you very much, Ismail. It's a pleasure, and I think we've had great interaction just before the session. So I thought it would be good to also say hello to everyone here attending, and I hope I add a lot of value, especially in just this current situation and climate, because it's a important subject which benefits a lot to me, and I thought think to the people as well. So let's crack on, and I think we can do very well in this session.
I'm really thankful because, as you mentioned, the topic is very relevant with nowadays the case that we face, and we will be discussing the crisis and also how entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship is a catalyst for this period. And you have a really deep knowledge and experience worldwide. Looking forward to hear your experience. I would like to greet our participants. Thank you for being a part of this session. You may share from where you join, your city or your country in the chat room, as well as if you have a question or anything that you would like to be answered relevant with the topic, please feel free to put your question to the chat room, or at the bottom you will see a ask a question part. Then we will be answering these questions during the session or at the end. So I see a participant from Lebanon. Rania, welcome, and I'll greet everyone one by one while they share their message. So Sabirul Islam, we met in 2010. It was in Osaka, in Japan. Mm-hmm. You are one of TOYP award winner, 10 Outstanding Young Person, the program that awards young entrepreneurs and young outstanding persons. You are an author as well as you are a business coach, and you have traveled during this period to different countries, but you had a big ambitious goal to inspire 1 million people through entrepreneurship, and you have traveled more than 30 countries, you said.
Indeed.
We will be really glad to have a brief about yourself, about your main focus.
Sure. No, that'll be wonderful. And I think, first of all, let me just quickly say hello to everyone once again. And honestly, when I came across the idea back in 2009, it was just to actually go around the world to see how I can influence and empower a million people around the world. This idea came about because there was a question that struck me, and it's very relatable in terms of why entrepreneurship itself is a very pivotal aspect of many people's lives, of being entrepreneurial. And the question struck me was, when you leave this world, what will you be remembered for? And this happened after a session I delivered in Nigeria back in 2008. And a young gentleman comes over to London a few months later and comes knocking on my door.
How many years old you were at that time?
I was 18.
18, yeah.
I was 18 at that time.
It's really great.
So still fairly young in my teenage years. So what happened was, he comes over after hearing this event. 6 months later, he flies over to London and he says, "Sabirul, you have changed my life." And it was that moment where this question struck me: when you leave this world, what will you be remembered for? And the idea and the thought process behind that, you could go to a country that you've actually never been to before and make such an impact from even just a 20-minute presentation, talking about your entrepreneurial experience, talking about your background, talking about why it is you do what you do and what makes you the person that you are, had such a significant effect on this young man's life that it was the catalyst for me in terms of how I springboard and how I go and think beyond what is possible. So I set up the Inspire 1 Million campaign. In fact, I launched it at the JCI 10 Outstanding Young Person the World Award in Osaka, Japan, where I had the privilege of being around thousands of people from the JCI community, Ismail being one of them, who are just having accepted the award and just sharing the idea that I want to travel the world to empower 1 million people around the world, that they too can become entrepreneurs entrepreneurs. They too can become a change for their community, for their culture, for their way of life, and influence their community as well as influencing and enhancing themselves. And so, having the award ceremony, what I did was I got in touch with everybody who I met, and just said, I want to travel to your country and see as many events as I can do, speak in as many events as I can do, based on the subjects I'm so passionate about, which is about making change, which is about entrepreneurship, which is about empowering others that they too can set up their own businesses, whether it's a social business or whether it's a business for even a profit basis. Whatever it is, they're going to be recruiting, they're going to be empowering, they're going to be making a difference. And so over the course of 4 years, from 2010 to 2014, it was quite a phenomenal journey where I managed to speak in 867 events across the four years in 31 countries, majority of which was supported by JCI. So a huge thank you goes out to everybody who was involved, and we had over 1 million people in attendance. So that's talking about people who actually attended the event. So it was a dream fulfilled, it was an ambition fulfilled, and it was a lot of difference made. And I hope that everybody who did attend, who did make a difference, did go on to set up their own business, did go on to make an impact in their communities. And I think entrepreneurship paved a great way to make a global change actually happen.
For me, the same period was like from Osaka in 2010, when I was like a national leader of the organization, until 2015 to become global leader. Same journey, traveling around to different countries, mainly supporting the network as well as the organization, as well as making the campaign, building my career towards the leadership steps. Was really a great period. During that period, you mentioned that you reached to 1 million people.
Yes.
Leading by example is a true philosophy that we believe, and you lead by example during that period you mentioned. Can you explain a little bit about what is the power of leading by example?
Well, when you're leading by example, what this truly means is you're creating wealth. You're creating wealth through people. Now, that in itself, when you think about entrepreneurship and when you're thinking about business in general, people always think about money. People always think about profit. People always think about that's not the real asset, especially if you're looking at current situations like this. Even when I started my entrepreneurial career, we're going through a financial crisis that time. We're going through a different form of crisis at this moment in time. And people often think, well, there are so many organizations, so many businesses who have tons of money, but they're going broke. They're falling, collapsing in such an environment because they don't have the will and the power of the people buying into who they are and what they represent. So the thing is, for me, having gone through this journey, I always believe that the asset you truly hold is with the network in which you build, and the constant relationship that you keep with them. Because even a great moment like this was, even just a couple of weeks ago, just a great opportunity just to go through the list of people who I've met, who I've come across, and just say hi, hello to them, just dropping them a message saying, this is, I'm Sabirul Islam, we've connected on this event many years ago. I'd love to reconnect, re-engage. And that's your wealth. That's what carries you forward. And that amount of smile, even through a virtual email that comes through, put it on your face, put it on their face, that's priceless. And I think that is what makes a true entrepreneur who can actually create a certain amount of wealth and difference through the network in which they build. So when you're thinking about entrepreneurship as a whole, one of the core aspects of what I thought about growing up is it's not about how much I end up making, because a lot of people in their early days think about that. Yes, I have a product, I have an idea, and this is how much I want to make. Yes, money is important, or it plays an aspect in a role, but in terms of the network you build, in terms of the difference you make, in terms of the problem you solve, that's a much bigger solution to actually how you evolve as a person and the character you build. And one of the things, because I really want to talk about, is that we actually live in a society where attitude from a lot of people is often not aligned. And what that means is that there are three phases to when you look into attitude. One being an effective component, which, for instance, for example, if you want to set up a business or you're in the business industry, is that you might have a fear that your business will fall in a certain crisis or a certain situation. Where another is a behavioral aspect, where your actual behavior doesn't align with how you feel, thing where when the actual fear itself takes practice. So when you have that effective component actually holding you back, that you have a fear in business falling, especially through a pandemic or whether it's through other forms of crisis, your behavior must must be able to counter that. Your behavior must be able to change that mentality. That no, actually, I can believe I can come out of this strong, so that your cognitive feeling is actually a lot stronger, and the behavior has to align with that, saying that actually, when I do come out of it stronger, this is the actions I will take, this is the protocols I will follow, so that everything is aligned. So the attitude is a lot more stronger and a lot more coherent that way, so that people you connect with, the people you meet, and the business that you do, the leads that you follow with, all have a positive impact, because you yourself believe in your concept, believe in your idea, and know you can. And this whole can-do mentality technically comes from that, the way in which your attitude is aligned. So because this whole idea of entrepreneurship, or even in today's society, we live in what's called a VUCA world. And in leadership, this is quite a significant aspect, because it's a very volatile situation in which we're living in, whether the rate of change for whatever it is you do has such significance. Now, nobody could have predicted a pandemic like this. Nobody could have predicted even any other issues around the world. But things that you can do for your own self is be able to develop an adaptive mindset, have a vision, or embrace certain aspects of your life that adjusts to an ecosystem, or that adjusts to a way of being agile in a volatile situation. So why being a leader in such a situation is so important is because we are uncertain of the lack of predictability. So in today's society, things are not very much predictable. You don't know what's going to happen, but you can at least have that sense of anticipation that this is the sort of change you create. And that's why having a vision is so important. And in order to embrace a vision, you need the power of your network. You need the power of the people to come in and support you, to guide you, and develop that level of self-awareness, because there are a lot of complexities when it comes to a VUCA situation. Complexities, chaos, issues, even a generational shift in how things work, because things that worked in 10 years ago might not work now, because especially with the boom in technology, how we're having this webinar right now, people wouldn't have done this 15, 20 years ago. So it's how do you adapt to a certain situation based on what's going on, and you have to have a design for the future. And I think that is so important. And the final aspect of the VUCA element is being ambiguous. Is that people often have a very haziness sort of approach to reality, and it's a very challenging situation to actually fall into. And I would say avoid that in as much as you can, because as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as somebody who is not only leading a business, somebody who is also employing probably quite a number of people, you are a role model. You are seen as somebody who can guide and influence others through some form of change. So if you have that sort of mentality that you can adapt and change when it comes to a VUCA situation, or have a mentality that is able to combat the VUCA that is in this world, you're able to establish a much more stronger network, a much more stronger emphasis in the business, and adapt, which is what you will avoid when it comes to crisis situations like today, because a lot of businesses are, it's hard to say, and it's unfortunate to say, will fall and will falter because they don't have a plan B. They don't know how to deal with a certain situation that arises. So it's all about knowing what your not only what your inner game is, but what the game plan is that you have, and what the outer game is in which you put together that consistency that you require. And I want to throw a question at the panel as well that's tuned in terms of how you're adapting with the current situation, because it'll be good to actually get some of your opinion, what you're doing in terms of how, for example, let's say we're over this pandemic in the next couple of weeks or months ahead. What is the sort of game plan that you actually have in place to make sure that your business is sustainable? And it'll be good to actually share that with people. And I can provide a lot of feedback and opinion on that, on what I've been going through as well. So I throw that question at them. It'd be good if you can share that, so I can also go through with all the other participants as well.
We would like to greet our participants. We have participants from Lebanon, from Turkey, from France, Norway. So thank you for being part. Please share your opinions, as well as the plan or action steps that you are moving forward. You take. It will be very beneficial for us. Meanwhile, Sabirul, how you define then the entrepreneur's role or entrepreneurship ecosystem's role especially during this VUCA world, as you mentioned. VUCA stays, you said, for volatility, for uncertainty, for complex world and ambiguity. So it's a life that entrepreneurs face, we may say, daily. But
Hmm.
now we should work on that competency of entrepreneurs
Hmm.
that they have.
Yeah.
How they may take role during this period.
Well, this is all to do with the growth mindset, because
Mm-hmm.
when you want to have when you want to be adaptable to a certain situation, briefly spoke about attitude itself. Like for me, one of the great things I love being about being an entrepreneur, not necessarily the business that I run. That's the one aspect of what I do. It's everything else that follows. For example, the world of public speaking. When I used to do a lot of talks, or even before going into a talk, I used to fear the element of public speaking. I used to want to avoid it in as much as possible because I had that fear that I'll have almost like a panic attack or some issues that will hold me back. And then there's that internal belief system that I often had. Will say, "Oh, audiences will laugh at me because I'm doing certain things in certain way." So it's about making sure that those components, so that again, that attitude is aligned, so that you not only combat the fear itself, which is what it was the effective component, which I spoke about, in terms of how you would come out from this situation as an entrepreneur. So eliminate that fear that actually your business will falter or your business will collapse, or the people you will lose quality people in your organization because of this, because you might not be able to pay salary, or you might not be able to grow with the idea in which you have. But being able to come up with a solution, a situation where you actually behave and make sure that you have a plan B in place. You're taking the actions, you're taking the steps to make this happen. So it starts with attitude, having the correct, right attitude to be able to say, yes, I will come out of this situation a lot stronger, a lot more. I'll be creating a way in which to adapt to the situation. Then follows with the behavior in which you're actually following through with the whole idea, where it's consistent. So it's not just a one-off thing that, oh my God, I've come through it and that's it. Great. You need to prepare for a next potential situation, because this thing will last for quite some time. It's not that the case numbers will come down and all of a sudden the world is hooty ha. Whoever your market is, think about it like this. If you're based in Morocco, if you're based in Turkey, if you're based in the UK, in the US, wherever you're listening in from, the idea is that your your economic system will come out through this at a different time than another organization or another country. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you yourself have come out of this situation altogether, because your clients, your customers are still going through a certain phase. Their behavior, their attitude, their mentality is very much different to would be very much different to yours, because your country may have come out of it. So how do you adapt to different changes in different climate situation or different situations across different countries? And that in itself is a challenge. So you need to find a protocol or an action or a solution that works really well with adapting to those situations. Like a lot of people now are, especially things like communication being one good example, like how we're communicating online. A lot of people wouldn't have given that as much of a thought when they could meet face to face, or when they could have just call each other. A lot of more companies are being adaptable to this change, and it's often learning by doing. So you put into a position, you're put into a situation where it actually brings out the best in you, to really discover more about who you are and what you wish to do, and then that leads to better results. And I think that the performance that you will see that comes out of having a stronger attitude, a better behavior, consistent behavior, and a solution in place that works for your market, works for your team, works for you as an organization, has a much more potent effect. I want to also talk about how to create this growth mindset, because the growth mindset has, I believe, three key phases to it. So first and foremost is looking at what's called the inner game. And I came across this through a book of a friend of mine wrote called Change Your Game. And it was a very interesting concept which he wrote about, talking about initially the inner game, because what this talks about is being authentic, and that if you want to create a better context of your own life or the organization in which you're working in, you have to look at your own self first. So being authentic, respecting the time in which you have and the time others have, because although we may think that we're at home, we're stuck at home at this present time, we have a lot of time in our hands. In fact, there's a lot more that we are actually giving ourselves to think beyond thinking more in the face of solitude, in the aspect of solitude, giving our own self time to actually learn what we're capable of, or unlearn things. And that's a very unique way of having a perception, because what you think you may know what way might work in a certain situation won't definitely work in a current situation.
It may not work nowadays, correct?
Yeah,
To unlearn. This
to
is what
unlearn. So when you
unlearn.
unlearn something, it's a really unique concept to be able to start, almost on a clean slate, and to go to that process of unlearning, because you've been raised in a certain way, or you've gone through a certain experience in life. You had a moment of failure at some point in what you're doing, or had made a mistake somewhere. That point in itself, yes, you learn how to overcome that, but it doesn't necessarily mean you've unlearned something which is often holding you back. So putting yourself on a clean slate, you train your thoughts, you train your own thoughts in a way where you're creating this space of solitude space, your own space to work and create a new slate that works for you. So that looks into the inner game, being authentic with yourself and having faith in your abilities going forward. What they also spoke about was also the creating a strategy, a roadmap, and that looks into the game plan. So one of the key things a lot of people are doing now is getting good online. No matter what they're doing, they're trying to look at all these things. For example, going onto LinkedIn, learning, trying to learn as much as possible that's on skills in which they may have not had in the past. So creating new soft skills that's relevant, or much more strategic skills that are more relevant for their business, but learning to create something that's bigger than you. And you have to see it that way. That a lot of entrepreneurs, when they want to go into the world of business, are going in with a mindset and a game plan that they are their business. And when you're going into that aspect or that mindset, what happens is that you will falter quite easily and quite often, purely on the basis that you, as much of an asset you hold yourself, you are not, you cannot carry that brand forward. That brand will not go forward for much longer. So it's something that you have to see, that the game plan or the strategy you have in place lasts for much longer than and is much bigger than what you think yourself to be. So the organization put that first. And I spoke about earlier about wealth. Wealth is, to create wealth is all about the network, about the people. So that's part and parcel of your game plan. Who can you connect with? Who haven't you connected with that could be relevant at this point in time? And the final aspect looks into the outer game itself. So, for example, the daily actions, the consistency, the being persistent at what you do. And one of the ways to do that is modeling success. So looking at other organizations that's doing it correctly. And if you think about the current situation, countries are looking at other countries, those who have pretty much eased their, let's say, lockdown. What's happening? What's the sort of reaction? What's the sort of outcome? We need to also embrace that as entrepreneurs, looking at other people who are actually taking on board certain changes to fit this current dynamic, to fit a crisis, to fit a situation like this, and see exactly what can we take from them and model for our own businesses, for our own way of doing things, to make things effective. And I say sometimes that, and I know majority of you might already know this, is sometimes mentoring, sometimes being coached on these also has a huge significance. Somebody who's gone through a crisis before, approaching them and asking them for some guidance, but building a consistent habit with that, so that you know what the sort of approach is, what the style is, and what you need to do to be able to have a consistently working outer game that models success as a whole. But I think that's a crucial way of learning, and crucial way of adapting to a certain situation.
You mentioned something really important, to learn from each other, and especially nowadays, these tools, digital tools, helps a lot with that. So while we build our network, and also we build our wealth, you said this is really important, but also we can learn from each other how others overcome the case and how they are surviving, because there is a survival period, also preparation period for incoming days. Looking to the examples that you have connected through your network, so for some entrepreneurs it's also opportunity period, but for some it's a very challenging period. How you see the difference between them through their attitude or approach, and what will be your recommendation? in that
That's a
perspective.
very personal perception of what
Hmm.
is seen as a challenge and what is seen as an opportunity. Because if you are an entrepreneur and you have that
Hmm.
entrepreneurial mindset, you will see any crisis as an opportunity.
Hmm.
But again, the whole idea of being able to adapt to that crisis and not just being an entrepreneur for that crisis, you have to be very careful that when you're setting up an idea or you're coming up with an idea and setting up a business that is based around an idea that's come out of a crisis, people tend to move on quite quickly. And you will see
Hmm.
a certain boom that will occur where businesses and entrepreneurs that have often found it very challenging during this crisis will come out of it and will come out of it much stronger because they learned to, as I say, to adapt. So if there's anybody who is listening who is new to the world of entrepreneurship, this is a great opportunity to think about ways in which your business can adapt to it, but not necessarily run just based
Hmm.
on that situation, because the world will come back to normal at some point. And so it's knowing what the bigger picture is when you're looking at it that way. For me personally, the way I've adapted my business is a lot of the communications that I do is pretty much based online anyway. So it's pretty much being a continuation of that. The businesses that I run, for example, I developed a game quite a while back called the Teen Entrepreneur board game, and my business pretty much originated around that, where I was able to not only train and educate people on financial education around the world through a game concept that I made. One of the things that hurt me and during this point in time was the fact that I cannot go and do face-to-face delivery, I cannot facilitate events, I cannot do many of these things. So a lot of it is having to be done online. So creating an app that is able to teach what I teach, but actually facilitating that virtually. So as I'm teaching and as they're playing, as they're going through the learning phase of what it is to run a business, what it is to play the concept of setting up a business,
Hmm.
this is all delivered through the game in which I've created. So I've worked with my team to help, especially during this crisis point, to be able to create a
Hmm.
solution that works so that I can facilitate virtually just like this, but they're also actively engaged by going through the concept of the game itself, to the app. So again, it's about being able to adapt to a specific situation. But whether that app would be my long-term solution, I doubt it, because for me, I'm somebody who actually likes more the face-to-face engagement.
Hmm.
But I know for sure that that solution is there. So should we face another situation, should I need to deliver a session like this, I know it's possible because I've created a solution that is
Hmm.
possible. I do a lot of events, speaking on various subjects and topics. Again, it's quite interesting to think that when you're running a service business, how you would actually go and do that, or a consultancy type business, because a lot of it is that yes, you can deliver it online, but are you giving the same amount of value when
Hmm.
something is delivered online compared to face, because that emotional connection, like the people we have on right now, I'm not getting to see them. I don't get to see their reaction. I don't get to see their emotional thoughts and their human connection. So sometimes that element is also missed out. So when you're trying to create a concept that works, you have to also look into the way out the pros and cons. Certain aspects might work in a certain situation, whereas other aspects don't. But again, it's being adaptable, being flexible enough to actually give it a try and see whether it works for you. And I think the power we all have in our hands in today is the power of the internet. It's just being creative enough and innovative enough, which is almost the foundations of what entrepreneurship is built upon. Looking at a problem and trying to solve it with innovation, with ideas, and making sure we have the network of people to help influence us and guide us to get there. So yeah.
Rudy shared that you learned something new, VUCA. So VUCA might be a new concept for some of our participants,
Mm-hmm.
but truly it's a period that we face. It's a, let's remind once more, it's a volatile, uncertain, complexity, and ambiguity. And during this period, how you feel that entrepreneurs will survive as well, because it's a challenging period for them, especially when we go through the different phases. Like they have a new idea, they look for investment, for seed capital, or later on for angel
Mm-hmm.
investors.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel that this investment process will be challenging, or will?
Actually, not. Why?
Yeah.
Because people are more open to communicating. Which
Okay.
is very, very odd to think and to say, but people are open because the people have time on their hands and they're not going out to meeting. They're sitting at home most of the time, having their meetings online. So if you want to tap into somebody, or you know somebody who buys into the ethos of the brand that you hold, or the idea that you have, and for example, you need an investor, and you know an investor you could potentially tap into, who you might have been afraid to tap into in a normal situation because they're such a busy individual, or they wouldn't have given your idea a second thought. Now is the time to actually approach them, because if you can come up with a way in which you can get even 5 minutes of their time online, they have that time. They're not spending half an hour on the road getting to their next meeting. They're pretty much saved that time. So it's about thinking a different way of thinking. So knowing that they're a lot more approachable now. Yes, they might have meeting, they might have plans in place during the day, but you can always poke them. And I think that's one way in which I've managed to connect with a few people, not necessarily investors, because I didn't really require investment at this time, but it's just knowing that it's possible. Funding having the capacity to maintain your business, the cash flow, the capital that's coming in, that in itself is a challenge. That's something that a lot of businesses are facing, no matter how big or small. So again, that whole idea of knowing how to combat a volatile situation, because we know that there are governments who are providing a lot of support and schemes in different parts of the world. It's about tapping into what the government schemes are in your country, if they are providing help and support, because pretty much small businesses are the heart and everything of the economics of the ecosystem. So without small businesses running, they don't employment it reduces. So and all of the opportunities in a country will falter. Not necessarily big organizations providing all of this. It's young entrepreneurs. It's entrepreneurs in their early stages. It's people with ideas, people with innovation. So for me, it's just more in the sense that if you feel that you're afraid to target somebody or to approach somebody, whether
it will be easier now.
It's a lot easier. And I figured that out. People who were, in fact, even though being a confident person who can speak on stage in front of thousands of people, you often do have that shyness, that nervousness to approach somebody who is a lot more successful, who has a lot more money, who is a lot more well off, who actually who is pretty much similar in your way of thought process and thinking, and could buy into your idea. I've approached them, and funny enough, it's they would give you time. They would give you that open-minded approach. Thank you. They'll be humble. You ask them how they're going through this certain situation, crisis. It shows that you care, and that's the asset I'm talking about. That's the wealth I'm talking about, and that's something that you have a lot more human interaction, which we used to have in the old days before all this social media boom came about, which all of this craziness came about in the internet. People were a lot more humble and a lot more human. So this is actually teaching us a bit of our old self, how we used to be back in the days. So I say leverage that, make the most of that, and you will actually figure out there's a great opportunity not to be missed.
Thank you for this great advice. You wrote a book, and now you have a plan for the future. I'll be glad to hear what are your future plans.
Sure.
What you are preparing for. Yeah.
So as I spoke about, that public speaking has been always a core aspect of what I do, not only to motivate, not only to empower, but also as a speaker coach to guide others to also set up their own career pathway as a professional speaker. Because I feel that entrepreneurship has had a huge factor in my life, has a huge factor in the people I've impacted through the Inspire 1 Million campaign, having traveled the world, that a lot of people often want to emulate you. A lot of people often want to see and see how you've actually grown and how they could do the same. Now, fear is often something that's holds back a lot of people, and public speaking is a great way. Like organizations like JCI have played a pivotal role in helping to combat fear, getting people united, because you come across very senior people in organizations who may have the top level posts in such big organizations, but the one thing that unites them with a lot of people who, even however senior, junior you are, that a lot of them have a fear of actually presenting. So I looked into that and I thought, what can I do? What can I do? So I've actually in the process of writing, so it's not fully complete yet, writing a book called Build Your Confidence on Stage, which looks into the 4 pillars of what I believe public speaking to be. And especially if you want to set up a profession, one looks into the psychology of public speaking. So again, this whole process of unlearning in order to relearn. which is very important. The next is about the principles of public speaking, which talks about how you can eliminate all the bias and all the stereotypes in which is associated with the world of speaking. The third element, third pillar, looks into the masterclass itself. So how do you come up with a professional speech, your body language, your attitude, your performance, your presentation, all of those nitty-gritty stuff that goes into what makes a truly solid and sound professional speaker, a public speaker. And the fourth element is the profession itself. So the fourth pillar, and that looks into the business element of it. And not a lot of books you will see in the world of public speaking talks about the business side, because public speaking is, as a professional, is not just a sense of talking. You need to have leads, you need to have a network, you need to have a system in place. So what is that system? For example, for a lot of people, especially getting into the world of business, they're talking, having set up their business, they're looking at putting it together, a CRM platform, making connections, and having that, so building that sort of network. What is the last communication you've had with an event organizer you've spoken with perhaps 5 years ago, 6 years ago? So at reconnecting, rebuilding the marketing plan that needs to go in place, the strategies that need to be in place. So it talks about all of these, the four pillars, in what shapes a almost not quite an entrepreneur, but an individual who has a passion for speaking into an actual profession, where they can actually turn that into a lifestyle profession. So that's what the book talks about. And then the book follows on from with a course where I actually will be training a lot of people in how to become professional speaker, and coaching them as well as they're doing the course. So that's my sort of project at this moment in time over the course of, and this great, the crisis actually helped, because it does free up a lot of time in the evening to write the book. So it's a great opportunity to just, solitude in my own mind, get down to writing.
It brought you also time for producing, so it helps your future targets. And indeed, public speaking is very crucial for leaders, but also for entrepreneurs, because always we hear the elevator pitch, like a brief pitching your startup to investor or to audience. And we see that startups and entrepreneurs face challenges during this period. They have to learn to share their ideas, to somehow, have the audience, have the support for the ideas. Therefore, the public speaking skills is crucial for entrepreneurs. How you would mention that part? How you feel it's relevant with entrepreneurs as well?
With entrepreneurship in public speaking, I naturally got into public speaking through the idea that I set up my first business, as I say, when I was very young. I was 14, in fact, when I was set up my business. And if you were to ask me, so Sabirul, what was your business back then? It was a web designing business with my friends. And if you ask me, was I or am I a tech genius? I said no. Honestly speaking, I still don't know today how to design a website for myself. I couldn't do that, and it's not me. But the thing is, I set up a business and realized that I had people around me, and people brought me confidence. People brought me the ability, when especially leading a team, it brought me a team to guide them, to empower them, and then that naturally helped me progress into presenting, not necessarily public speaking, but presenting in front of the team, building that slow progression into what it takes to actually develop that level of confidence when it comes to public speaking. And for entrepreneurship, it is crucial, whether it's for pitching, whether it's for sharing the idea of your business, because a lot of the time you might have an idea, a solution that the world is craving for. So you get often invited to come and deliver at a panel or a debate, or something that actually promotes your idea, promotes your vision. And there's a lot of platforms. There's a lot of groups that will be associated with businesses that you might have and the ideas that you have. So it's important to have that confidence. I talk about one of the key things about having that positive mindset is one of the P's that I talk about out of the 7 P's, and it's in one of the books I wrote about called The World at Your Feet, which is the first book that I wrote. And the first P was about positive mindset, that you are what you can be, and what you believe in who you can be. When you have that mindset that you can achieve a certain aspect of whatever it is, whether it's public speaking, whether it's a business, whether it's innovating an idea, it's that the first element is self-belief. So positive mindset comes through self-belief, and that's a fundamental element of that. Next is about your passion. Where does your passion come from? What is passion? Is public speaking, if you were to directly ask me the question, is public speaking my passion? I would answer the question, no. Public speaking isn't my passion, but public speaking helped me discover my passion.
It's a
So you
tool.
have
Yeah.
you have to see it like this, that even if you think entrepreneurship is your passion, deep down you might actually realize that entrepreneurship may not be passion, but entrepreneurship paved way to lead to an interest that discovered your passion. So for me, what truly was my passion was to empower people to make change and to see the difference made through the Inspire 1 Million campaign, which wouldn't have happened
Great.
without public speaking, or without the interest in public speaking, which wouldn't have happened without my journey in entrepreneurship. So what you realize is that passion itself evolves over multiple layers of interest in order to find a form of self-discovery, to know exactly what truly makes you happy. It's one thing that I would say, there's a way of saying, what truly makes your heart sing, or what makes your heart sing. And I think when you realize that, that's a form of a discovery, a form of a very thought-provoking question you could ask yourself. And a lot of people won't know, because a lot of people haven't put themselves in that position to be able to figure out what they want to do. And sometimes if you've been working for an organization the past number of years and then decided you want to leave that organization and set up your own business, and are now running your own business, what aspect of that business, or what is it about this business that's making you happy? And when you think a lot deeper in a much more philosophical level in that sense, you'll realize that actually it might be a certain aspect that the people you're employing is what makes you happy, or the opportunities you're providing to the clients, or to the market, is what makes you happy. So it could be very fine things like that. And then it leads on to, for example, perseverance, persistence, talking about having purpose, living life with purpose and value. So public speaking for me has been a real catalyst in getting to know the world for what it is, knowing to understand how different markets react, different countries react to a certain situation and a certain approach, knowing that I can then adapt my business to fit them, to fit their way of doing things. So it paved the way for my entrepreneurial growth. And I think that's why everybody who is an entrepreneur, I deeply believe, needs to be
A good
confident
speaker. Yeah.
in public speaking, no matter what.
So this period is also a good opportunity to practice these skill sets.
Indeed,
Yeah.
and I would encourage that. In fact, I've got a YouTube series called "Build Your Confidence on Stage," which is as a promotion with the lead up to the book, where I deliver weekly tips and guidance on public speaking, which talks about various things from eliminating fear to how you actually go and set up a speech, to various other aspects. So it's a weekly show that comes out there every Tuesday. So it's very recently launched. I think got 6 or 7 episodes on there already. So it would be worth if you guys can
And
have a
what
look.
is the name of YouTube channel?
Build your confidence on stage.
Okay, so if we may follow that one from YouTube.
Yeah.
Build Your Confidence on Stage YouTube channel. You have 6, 7 episodes.
Yeah, 6, 7 episodes already. So
Yeah,
I recently launched this in order to help with the promotion for the book that's coming out in December this year. Yeah,
this is great. And I'll be asking your final remarks, especially advice and recommendations for nowadays and also for post-pandemic period, how entrepreneurs would benefit more and how to prepare themselves for incoming periods.
Well, I say when you're looking at the current situation, see it as a blessing. It's to do with perception, perspective. As much as it is hurting a lot of people with the loss that the world is facing, and from an entrepreneurial perspective, it's seen as a very unique opportunity to connect with people who you might have not connected with before, or you might have been afraid to connect with before. Join a lot of networks, join a lot of groups that can help springboard your idea, you as an individual and your organization. So that's 3 perspectives. So you, your idea, and the organization. So see it from that perspective. And there could be 3 separate groups that you participate, whether that's through a professional network on LinkedIn or other social media platforms, or where you actually go on and find on a website somewhere. that's related to your market, that could benefit you. And as I say, mirror those who have already made a success of it during this time, and hear from them what's working, what's not. Because end of the day, you have to learn to be able to adapt to whatever situation, whatever scenario. We're not saying that we're going to face another crisis like this again. I hope we don't, and I pray that we don't. But you have to be able to make sure that your business is able to be able to adapt to any given scenario, any given situation. So I would encourage that as much as possible, and having a plan B in place. Because what you don't want to do, and what I've been seeing through a lot of businesses, big or small, is the amount of talent in which we're losing because of this crisis, and because we are not able to pay our employees, or because we're not able to carry on the business as normal. So we're losing revenue, we're losing income, we're having to give way to making a lot of people redundant. So in that way, you're losing talent. So how can you provide, especially if they're great minds who can actually springboard your business post-pandemic, how can you retain them? What is it that you can do? So for me, what I did with a lot of people I work with is I offer them a small aspect of the company for a short period of time, as a way of paving way that I believe in you so much that I don't want to lose you, and I know you're an asset. And the only way I can show you that you're an asset to the company is if I show that you are not an employee but a partner, as such. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody perhaps has that capacity, but whichever way, it shows that you believe in them. You show them the people, the wealth that comes from the people, the wealth itself comes from the people. So that in itself is a true mindset to have as an entrepreneur, especially to come out of a crisis, come out of a situation like this much stronger. And I hope each and every one of you who is listening is able to feel a lot better post pandemic.
I thank you for all this great experience sharing. We have some time for one or two questions. If we receive a question from audience, if you have a question, now I may direct to Sabirul Islam. Please share your question. Meanwhile, I'll be asking a final question regarding platforms, because nowadays, as we try to reach members or friends from all around the world, like Gain Global, what will be your recommendation regarding the roles of these kind of platforms? How you see them?
Well, as I said, groups, platforms, Gain Global, it's one thing. So such a platform like this is able to connect you with people who can share ideas, share their opinions, share their thoughts. And I think that's exactly what you need, because a lot of people are down in spirit. A lot of people are down in terms of motivation, in terms of way to do things. And not perhaps everybody will be able to provide a solution that is specific to your business, but there might be some aspects you can take away that you might be able to put in your asset box and say, yes, this is what's going to help me take to that next phase. So connect with people like through Gain Global, and say hi, hello to as many people as possible over a period of time. It's networks like this that really help emphasize how you can grow and how you can come out of a situation like this. And I wouldn't say that you limit it to one. You limit it to you go on as many as possible, because your business will only grow stronger if you know how to connect and communicate with people effectively, strongly. Like Ismail approaching me for this. We've not spoken for quite some time, and I received a WhatsApp message from Ismail regarding this, and I was really honored regarding that. So it goes to show that people are open, people that can re-express, even if you haven't connected for such a long time. So it just goes to show that it works. The system at this point in time works, and I would encourage you to leverage it as much as possible.
Yeah, and it helps to keep the connection, truly. I'm thankful for that. We have a question from Rudy Soshani. What will be the first thing, actionable item you advise to go in as a speaker path?
Okay, so the first is I talk about the speaker's psychology, and that in itself would be the first part. So in itself, looking at what it is you want to accomplish, what is the vision in which you have, and where is it that where does your fear lie as a speaker? So when in the current process of writing the book, I look at this whole process of unlearning. So if something is holding you back, eliminating self-doubt, or at least learning to control your relationship with self-doubt. And that's a crucial element, because one of the preconceived notions we have when it comes to doubt or when it comes to public speaking is doubt itself that we question. We turn questions into statements. For example, you might think that you might ask a question, am I good enough to speak in front of such a senior audience? And that question later on, the more and more you ask yourself, goes into a statement. I am not good enough to speak in front of such a senior audience. So when that happens, and when that mentality comes in place, you've already given up. You've already committed suicide as wanting to become a speaker. So avoid that, but learn how to control your relationship. Think more positive and more approach. So when you know the speaker psychology, when you try and create a speaker psychology, you need to be able to combat that in a much more unique way. Also knowing where your personality lies, where your passion lies, and how you're able to discover that. If speaking provides you a route on that, it's a great way to be able to understand the notion of how you can overcome a certain element of doubt to be able to speak on stage. And one of the things I do in terms of a lot of the session that I deliver is that actually giving something a try. Like, for instance, I'm not somebody who does a lot of YouTube videos and all of these things, but I'm a public speaker, I'm a professional speaker. So giving something a try like YouTube videos and seeing how that works for me was actually quite a challenge, because speaking in front of a camera with no audience, I'm not used to that. I'm not used to that. So it's quite a challenge to be able to have that mentality to think differently, that actually you can speak in front of a camera with blank walls behind you and actually carry on speaking for X amount of time. So it's almost that mentality where, yes, there may be an audience, there may not be an audience, but it's having that ability to give it a try to see exactly what you can do and what you can't do. That paves way. So there are multiple layers to this. This is just a very short way of summarizing it. And I would say that if you want further advice on that, the YouTube videos are there initially as a guidance. But I will also share with Ismail and also yourself, everybody who's attended, the link to my book when it does come out, or when it does go on sale, so that you can all access that. Because I always feel that you cannot jump into anything, whether it's business or whether it's public speaking or whether it's whatever platform, just in the heart that you come up with an idea and let's go for it. You need to be able to have that process of rewinding, unlearning, starting from ground on a clean slate, to think exactly how you can shift your mindset, shift your attitude, shift your behavior, develop a passion for it before you're able to feel the love and to be able to be successful in it. So that's what the initial phase looks at. Then it looks into the whole idea of coming to grips with the principle of what public speaking actually is and what it expects of you. And that's the next phase.
Thank you, Sabirul. There is one more question from Bengal MS. How do I combine entrepreneurship with school? I'm an undergraduate student in Turkey.
So sorry, I didn't quite hear that. Can you repeat that?
The question is, how do I combine entrepreneurship with the school? So, I'm an undergraduate student in Turkey.
Okay.
How I combine entrepreneurship?
That's a good question. In fact, I can give a good example on that. As I said, I was 14. I was in school when I started my first business as an entrepreneur. What it took was a group of passionate-minded people who I know how to leverage their skills. So I looked around me. The friends I had, close-knitted friends I had, they were all tech geniuses. They were all very potent in technology. And I knew I had one certain skill in me, which was always to bring my friends together, because whatever it is, going out and enjoying all the sort of social circles that we'd have, it would be me who would be coordinating that. So I saw myself as a somewhat of an initial leader, but I saw them as having the qualities to put together the actual business the backbone behind the business. So I leveraged their skills to be able to put together a company and lead them to my first company, which was the web developing company. So when you're in school or when you're in university, it's about looking at your friend circle, immediate friend circle. See what sort of asset they hold and what sort of strengths you hold, and not necessarily seeing your friends as your individuals. Yes, they're your friends, but also looking at them in a different perspective as well, that how can you leverage or utilize the skills and qualities they have to come together as a unit to really maximize. Because when you have a plan in place that this is an idea that you wish to accomplish, this is where you wish to go, but this is where your shortfall is, because your skills and asset will only take you a certain distance. Where are you lacking? Where is the sort of ideas? If you're not good at the marketing aspect, if you're not good at the sales aspect, who can fill that void? And sometimes within your own social circle, plays a big factor. And if that doesn't work, then you're having to look beyond your social circle. Sometimes you have to be amongst people who are a lot more like-minded in order to find great connections that can help you leverage your career as an entrepreneur. So within the school, I think it's the best platform because it's unexpected. You're not expected to set up a business during your time at university or so, because the matrix system expects you to still be going through the academics, to getting your degree, and then post-degree looking for your job. So when you break that system, you're already seen as somebody pretty much outstanding and abnormal to the world. And then the world's eyes are on you and thinking, okay, this guy really means something. So people are willing to help. They're more willing to help at that time. Exactly. Exactly. Hope that answers the question.
This is really good answer. So it's a good place to start. And with all the resources that we have, we hope that we have more students in the entrepreneurship ecosystem. You mentioned that your Teampreneur board game also targets very young teenagers.
Yeah, indeed. So the initial game was for the young audience, so around 14 to 15-year-olds in schools. Then it got redeveloped more for a senior audience in terms of how you can leverage economic changes and challenges through the game. So it does benefit both audiences. And in fact, I work with a lot of leaders and corporate organizations using the game in terms of how they will come out of a volatile situation if they're running their business through a game concept. So it's a very unique way of actually teaching leadership qualities to seniors. And who would have thought it? A game coming such practical use in the leadership training.
Very good. I'm thankful, Sabirul, for all the experience that you shared today. It was really an honor, pleasure to have you. There is one more question from Bengal. How do we access your upcoming training? Or you mean the training with webinars or with Sabirul Islam?
Webinars, or whether it be webinars, I can always do with Gain Global, or I can always do myself.
With pleasure.
I also do coaching. So I do coach a lot of people who want to either stepping up into their first role in entrepreneurship, or if you're already in a business.
How they may reach you?
Through my website. So it's sabirulislam.co.uk.
Okay. I'll put that one in the chat board as well.
Yeah, there's the personal one-to-one coaching sessions that are there as well.
And meanwhile, we have the link to our Gain Global platform on the screen. If you join there as well, we'll be glad to share the next events. We'll be emailing or sending a message for the audience, for our participants to join our event. In Gain Global, usually we do Tuesday and Thursday events. Nowadays, twice 2 webinars per week. Hopefully, we will focus on further with different concepts, like to have the pitching sessions, or maybe to have the opportunity to talk like seminars and some other concepts. This weekend, we had a meetup for our Turkish audience, and we had like 400 participants, half-day meetup, digital meetup for first time. We used to have that one physically, but due to current status, we didn't have a chance. But we didn't cancel. We put everyone in online platform. It went well, very interactive, good audience, good participants, good speakers. We hope that we can repeat likewise for our global audience in near future, hopefully. I'll ask your final remarks, Sabirul, before we close.
Well, I just want to say first and foremost, thank you, Ismail, for the invitation to address the audience. I hope I've added some value to each and every individual who's tuned in, and whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on a playback. Just want to make sure that each and every one of you going through difficult times, that it is possible to come out of it as long as you keep hold of the network and build a network. That, remember, that is your wealth, that is your asset. So keep connected, stay connected, and reconnect with as many people as possible. And this is a great example. So thanks very much.
I'm thankful really for the connection opportunities, and also thank you for all the participants who joined live today. The video will be shortly available for replay. Also, we have the past sessions in our YouTube channel. Please review them and you are welcome to our incoming sessions. Please take care, stay at home, stay safe during this period, and hopefully we see each other soon somewhere around the world. Take care, bye.